Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. And joining me as ever is Dallas King. Dallas, after a few celebrity interviews, you're back again.
Hello, feels good to be back, yes. Back where I belong.
Absolutely. So today we're going to do something a little bit differently. So a few weeks ago we teased that we were going to record an audio commentary and we were going to do like a poll up on Twitter that people could pick the winning film. So between us we picked two choices. Dallas with Booksmart and Good Time, and me with Mistress America and Margin Call, all went head to head. And the first time we did it over, I think it was one day, it actually ended up in a draw between Margin Call and A Good Time, which I was a bit surprised about. I don't know about you, Dallas.
Yeah, it was a surprise, especially because one of them was actually quite a lead, I think, up until about the final hour, and then we were both sort of saying, last chance to make a difference, and then, it ended up tied, and then you gave it a final push, and it still ended up tied after about another 10 votes. So, we had to go to a sudden death tiebreaker, didn't we?
I know, like Margin Call was in the lead for a good few hours, and then it was like an hour to go, and it was like head to head. Like Mistress America was completely out of the running. Booksmart surprisingly wasn't in contention. It was really between these two films, and I was very surprised. I expected sort of Margin Call to be the rank outsider. Then we had this huge flurry of votes at the end that couldn't even break the tie, and it still ended up being a tie. So we went to an 1 hour sudden death, and then sort of Margin Call once again romped it, which was surprising again.
It was surprising given how close it was in the final hour that you thought those people would have all voted again, but clearly all my A24 stands had better things to do for that hour, and maybe they'd gone out for their hour's exercise and had left their phones behind. Maybe that was it.
You never know. So Dallas, are you excited to dive into it? Is this your first time doing an audio commentary?
It is, yes, and I am excited that people clearly want two guys from Scotland to, tell everyone all the fun details about the American financial crisis of 2008.
Exactly. So for those that are not familiar with Margin Call, it's written and directed by J.C. Chandor, and the film follows the key people at an investment bank over a 24-hour period during the early stages of the 2008 financial crash. So if you're in the UK, you can find the film on Prime Video and BBC iPlayer, and if you're in the States, it's on HBO Now and DirecTV. So get it all booted up, and we'll have a countdown, and then we will dive into the film. So Dallas, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so if you've got it all standing by at home, we'll do a wee 3, 2, 1, hit play, and we'll guide you through the next 99 minutes and 18 seconds. So here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Film contains very strong language, apparently.
Absolutely, unlike our podcast. So Dallas, had you seen Margin Call before? And what did you expect when you saw this film go into the poll?
I had seen it before. I think I'd probably seen it when it first came out, sort of around about 2011. I think it was the first film to really sort of tackle the 2008 financial crash. But I think it's probably fair to say that more people are aware of The Big Short, which is a much more in-your-face, flashier way of telling a very similar story. But, I thought it was very well acted, very well written. I know the film got, I think it was the Best Oscar for Original Screenplay nomination, but I'm sure we'll get into all that before. But I was very impressed with it for a directorial debut, and, he's a filmmaker who's gone on to appear on the A24 project, with the most violent year. So yes, it was the bells ringing, the Margin Call starting. I was very impressed with it. What about yourself?
Yeah, I caught this when I went to see a double bill of Shame. I went to see Shame, and then I went into the cinema afterwards to catch this film. So yeah, it was a kind of, I didn't really have much expectations going in. I just quite enjoy films in this genre about people sort of going about their daily working business and watching sort of how professionals kind of handle themselves in these sorts of situations. I like movies about banking, and I enjoy movies about what's it called? how would I just say it, like newsrooms as well. So this sort of film seemed completely right up my street. So yeah, I was really excited to kind of see this one. So after watching Michael Fassbender get his big penis out, go on a sexual rampage around New York, it was time to see sort of the banks kind of screw over New Yorkers as well. So yeah, it's the New York sex double bill.
Yeah, rather than watching New Yorkers get screwed, you're watching them screw other people. So yeah. Now this was an interesting one because, it starts off with, this firm going through redundancies, and it reminded me of the first section of actually Up in the Air, and a part of me now wonders what it would have been like if there'd been a strange sort of shared universe where sort of George Clooney and Anna Kendrick had been the two people sort of taking people into the office and then outlining their redundancy packages and stuff like that. Do you think JC Chandor and Jason Reitman could have maybe worked together on that?
I have not seen Up in the Air. It's definitely one on my watch list for sure. But the one thing that I think becomes quite obvious sort of in that first few minutes is this is like a hell of a cast. I mean, this is a film that has a budget of $3 million, and you've got Kevin Spacey, Paul Bettany, Jeremy Irons, Zachary Quinto, Simon Baker, Mary McDonough, Demi Moore, Stanley Tucci, all kind of appearing in this film. Some of them a bit more well-known names at the time, some of them kind of up-and-coming, some that maybe kind of had their heyday behind them. It seems that they got a lot of actors involved, and I suspect on quite the cheap.
Absolutely. I mean, the one name you sort of missed off there, Penn Badgley, who's probably at this point probably down the lower end of the credit list, but he's really gone on to I know he'd probably done Gossip Girl by this point, but he's really sort of blown up in the last couple of years thanks to the sort of the You Netflix show where he plays a stalker in that. But I mean, for a directorial debut from your own script to assemble this kind of cast is really quite something special. And I know they filmed it, I think, in around about sort of 11, 12 days, was it, in the end? And they were sort of up against the wire, I think, with a lot of the cast who were sort of flying in, shooting their scenes, and then off again as well. So it must have been a very stressful environment. But I guess that's sort of added to the script and whatever, because it's a real high pressure situation that all these people are thrown into.
I was curious as well, kind of watching this, what are your memories of sort of the 2008 financial crisis, and did it sort of affect you in any way?
I don't think it affected me personally in any way. I think I was thankfully on a fixed term mortgage at that point, so I didn't really notice. I was still lucky for a couple of years by that point that I was able to. It didn't affect me too much in terms of money and stuff like that. I remember I actually went to New York for the first time in March 2009. I think I got a reasonable deal, so maybe they were still sort of feeling the effects of it. But that was when I went over to New York the first time just after this had happened. I mean, I remember it all playing out on the news with sort of Obama had just basically been elected, and then basically almost like 2 days into the job or something, or even like the day before he was due to start, it was basically like, we're all screwed, what are we going to do? And he had to basically, by the time he actually left office, had managed to get the economy back into a good state, and it looks like it's going to be a case of history repeating, and it's all going to happen again with due to this coronavirus situation. I mean, what about yourself?
I don't really remember it too much, to be honest. I was sort of a student at the time. I had moved to Edinburgh like 2 years earlier, so I was sort of in the full midst of student lifestyle, going out kind of probably most nights of the week. It was something that was kind of felt like it was on the other side of the planet. I was aware of sort of some political turmoil here in the UK in terms of sort of how it was affecting kind of Gordon Brown. We had to sell gold here in the UK to kind of help things out, but I was kind of pretty ignorant of it at the time. But then it was more sort of when I kind of a few years later sort of started to appreciate how badly things had gone in that period of time. Kind of I realised sort of in Obama's kind of early few months, and then films like A Big Short came along, which really kind of exposed me to how we got to the sort of the 2008 crash. And then when I caught this film in 2011, I never realised the full scope and sort of the evil antics that was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, I mean, because I think if it was, if I think, if memory serves, I think this one would have been 2011. Then I think Big Short was, I think it was 2012, and then you had The Wolf of Wall Street 2013, and it basically between those three films, and even Wall Street in particular, they just they paint a picture of this world, and I think it'd be fair to say it's not exactly complimentary. I know a lot of people look at Wolf of Wall Street and the original Wall Street, the Oliver Stone movie, and see a lot to admire, a lot of things to look at and say, I want that life. I know a lot of bankers got into the industry because of Wall Street, even though that was probably not the message that it was trying to say, because I know the most famous line in Wall Street is greed, for a lack of a better word, is good. But I think this film certainly, along with A Big Short, proves that greed, for a personal level, is good, but for society as a whole, it's not the best thing. Certainly not right now.
No, it certainly isn't and stuff. And I think, yeah, you kind of. I like the discovery that I think it'll come in a wee bit, like obviously about sort of Zachary Quinto's character, that it was even attracting sort of rocket scientists to Wall Street, that it wasn't sort of all just the sort of people that probably grew up on sort of the greed is good, not Wolf of Wall Street, sort of the oh, it's just completely skipped my mind. But yeah, it was bringing in all these kind of yeah, you were bringing in like real kind of number nerds and so on as well, and I suppose it was a huge booming sector, whereas sort of science and space was kind of a dwindling opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, in the end, I guess it's just money talks, and yeah, Zachary Quinto's character basically admits that yeah, the money was better here than at MIT working on rocket science and stuff like that. So.
So what do you think of sort of Stanley Tucci and kind of Paul Bettany in these roles and stuff? They're sort of probably the kind of leads really in the film at this kind of stage as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, sort of looking at it at this point, it looks like it could be Stanley Tucci's film, because he's the sort of first one to get fired. You think it might sort of follow him, but it's almost a sort of a passing of the guard thing where he sort of hands over the USB with the numbers to Zachary Quinto's character. And I mean, I'm a huge Stanley Tucci fan. I think he's just fantastic in any role that he does. He brings a lot of gravitas and empathy to someone, because certainly in this film he is one of the good guys, I guess. He's trying to do the right thing, even if it ultimately means he loses out. But I mean, obviously he can play bad guys, sort of like Lonely Bones and stuff like that. But I mean, this was, I think the first film I really sort of took notice of him would probably have been Devil Wears Prada, I think. And then also Easy A. He's half of my favourite parental couple in film history, I think, between sort of Patricia Clarkson himself and Easy A. Just fantastic. And this was sort of Paul Bettany when I think he was kind of in slightly a bit of the wilderness in Hollywood. He'd been in sort of great films like A Beautiful Mind and Master and Commander, sort of 2001, 2003, but then sort of had faded out of the way before sort of coming back in with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it was nice to see him back on the big screen in this.
I'd read a story sort of the night before he kind of got cast as Vision in Age of Ultron. Someone told him that he wouldn't work again in this town, and then the next day he got a role in one of the sort of biggest franchises in the world. So yeah, like he did. I suppose it applies to quite a few of the kind of actors in this, sort of the Demi Moores and Jeremy Irons, sort of like jobbing actors that you were like, oh, I like that person in that thing, but they didn't sort of seem to kind of be the kind of big name draws. They were sort of more sort of the supporting character or actor, or if you're someone like Demi Moore, maybe the Charlie's Angels villain.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like you see these actors like Demi Moore's just popped up there, and you think, wow, I mean, to get like these characters in for just a couple of scenes is really sort of testament to the quality of the script. And I was reading on IMDb that J.C. Chandor actually wrote this in a couple of months, basically on sort of while he was like maybe waiting for job interviews and commuting and stuff to interviews and stuff like that, while he was trying to find a job. And it was one of the sort of scripts that was on the blacklist of 2010, and then someone took a punt on it, and it knocked it out of the park.
So I think we obviously have to touch on the elephant in the room. Kevin Spacey is probably another one of the leading talents in this film. Sort of probably his kind of glory days at this moment in time in terms of, still starring in movies, hits in sort of House of Cards, but unfortunately I think you'd struggle to find Kevin Spacey in anything these days apart from weird videos released in and around kind of Christmas time on social media.
Yeah, I'm assuming the elephant in the room you're talking about is his hairpiece in this film.
See the eagle eye. Some people have got a good eye for noticing the hair pieces in films like this. I did not pick up on that.
I think there's definitely some extra hair being put on there. I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's all about this sort of separating the art from the artist, and it's a tough one because I was, a huge Kevin Spacey fan. From first thing I would have seen him in would have been Usual Suspects, then Seven, then American Beauty. So just as I was probably sort of really getting into film and stuff like that, Kevin Spacey was one of the sort of biggest stars, and then he would sort of pop up in these sort of cameo roles. But this role in particular reminds me of sort of Swimming with Sharks, which was another time when he was in this sort of office-based environment where he played a really sort of sadistic Hollywood agent who would torment his assistants. And then, this is a room where the entire floor is filled with sharks. These are people who will do whatever it takes to make a buck and stuff like that. But it's interesting in that this is a role where Kevin Spacey is certainly meant to appear conflicted, and he is one of the more sympathetic characters. So I didn't really have a problem sort of rewatching him in this. I think I have a good mind to be able to sort of switch off and sort of separate the art from the artist and see it as an actor doing a part rather than this is Kevin Spacey, I think. What about yourself? Did you find it troublesome on a rewatch, or?
Not so much. I think it's, for better or worse, it's had become a bit easier to watch some films or TV shows or read certain books these days, where you watch something and you're like, oh, that person's been cancelled. Oh, I recognise that producer's name on a film. They're a sexual deviant and so on. And it's kind of trying to make peace with it and not throw the kind of baby out with the bathwater. There's, some of the films that we've reviewed and discussed in the past, a person that has unfortunately carried out horrific acts maybe makes up a small part of a film or plays a key role in it, but there's still thousands of people that are involved in bringing a potentially really good film to kind of life, and it's trying to kind of think about those people but just acknowledge that this person has maybe done something terribly wrong, but at the same time, try and be as objective as possible with a film. It's certainly more difficult, but I think we're all having to become more experienced at it in this kind of current climate.
Yeah, no, I think it'll depend on each individual role, but I think that this one is a world away from sort of him as a person and what he did. That I think you're able to sort of turn it off, I think.
Yeah, so one thing I like about this, so obviously Stanley Tucci's leaving the building. He gives Zachary Quinto's kind of financial manager this USB stick. And why did looking at
he's looking at there, there's something's happening, something's going to happen,
yeah.
Something's going to happen.
Yeah, and it feels like when he does that moment, it feels like the film almost becomes a bit of a horror movie to an extent about what is about to unfold. That he has just sort of given him like the kiss of death, this like horrible kind of little bit of information and stuff. It certainly kickstarts the movie in quite a terrifying way.
Yeah, it is sort of that sort of cursed, poisoned sort of object. The book that you absolutely should not read, which is in the basement of this house that you should not have gone into. You know something bad is going to happen if he opens up the file, and it turns out to be, well, I think it's, well, I know they refer to it in The Big Short as an atomic bomb, and I think they probably do something similar with that here, and that, yeah, he realises that not only is his company screwed, but potentially everyone else, and then that sort of becomes the moral and ethical battle that sort of takes place over the next sort of 12 to 14 hours as they try to wrestle to a decision about what's going to happen. So I'm interested if, when watching this one, and you can compare it to The Big Short as well. Were you able to follow easily enough what everyone is talking about?
I think to an extent, there's an element of it. I think what works really well with Margin Call is you have the Jeremy Irons character in particular. When everything starts to really get into the nitty gritty, it's like, talk to me like I'm a total idiot, and that is so code for like, I'm the audience member in the seat that doesn't have a clue what you're all talking about. Dumb it down for me. And I always kind of find those scenes help me through it. I think when I was watching this film, it sort of felt like a kind of a horror show, just watching what these people were doing and sort of grappling with the enormity of kind of their current situation. With Big Short, I think they take a very interesting sort of stylish approach where they have things like Margot Robbie in a bathtub explaining subprime mortgages, or Anthony Bourdain explaining through the creation of a fish stew how they're making all these kind of mortgage deals and payments and how the whole thing's about to collapse. It's two very interesting ways of telling, a crash and sort of over a period of time as well.
Yeah, no, I think the Big Short was very good at sort of making you sort of sit up and pay attention to certain things by, absolutely by having Margot Robbie in a bathtub explaining the subprime mortgages, or Selena Gomez talking about, synthetic CDOs, which are commercial, I've got it here, collateralized debt obligations, and this is, I think, one of the things which basically this is about. It's about these mortgage subsidies, the creation of, essentially, this is why I probably wasn't too clued up and didn't really pay much attention when the mortgage crisis happened in 2008 and the financial crash happened. It was because, to me, you see all the stuff, and to me a lot of it is just, these are just numbers on a screen. How can it possibly affect me? You see all these people shouting in the trade rooms, or the ticket stocks are going up and down, and it's just, to me, it's just numbers on a spreadsheet. Sometimes it doesn't feel like real money. And I guess maybe that's where the problem lies, is that, these people are doing all these deals and it can seem like it's not real, but it turns out that it's very, very real and much more important than we maybe ever thought.
I suppose that's what we're seeing just now, is how it just takes maybe a week or a few days of our economy sort of not working or not ticking over for so much things to completely collapse. I mean, people, whether it's Trump or in the UK, talking about, we've never had it so good. The recession of 2008 is behind us. People are prospering, great economy, everyone's in a job. And then something like this comes along and it kind of exposes it for some of the sham it is. A lot of people on 0-hour contracts working in this sort of gig economy, all this kind of stuff, and it just completely kind of all crumbles down, and it's exposed that people aren't really living off kind of good, finances. I don't know about you, but if I lost my job tomorrow, I've got a bit of savings in the bank, but would I have enough to sort of pay my rent, my mortgages, my bill and stuff? We are truly kind of living month to month, and all it takes is one bad month or week and the whole system completely collapses. And I think you see that with this film. Everyone thought they could keep the good times rolling and living for so long, and unfortunately, we've got a virus just now, whereas that was sort of a financial collapse without sort of the push from a global pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, the virus sort of situation just now is probably your sort of force majeure act of God. This one is completely man-made, and was people really just digging. It seems certainly from here that they just started digging themselves a bigger and bigger hole, trying to essentially almost gamble their way out of it, and it failed spectacularly.
It's more things like, as this kind of continues to go on with like the way the film is shot, with the kind of natural lighting of these kind of computer screens, darkened rooms. Even when sort of Zachary Quinto, like a few minutes early, he's like on the phone call, like, guys, I'm trying to find people, and people aren't picking up the phone. There's a lot of imagery in this that I kind of would associate with a horror film. And ultimately what is happening in this film, people will die of it, from it, and people's lives will be destroyed more than any sort of serial killer can do. What is about to happen is the true horror show, and I know people love movies where it comes to, creatures from the Black Lagoon or serial killers or, Jasons or Freddys and all that sort of stuff. Often I think it comes down to it's the human beings that will absolutely destroy people in more horrific and terrifying ways than any sort of supernatural or horror kind of creation ever could.
Absolutely. I mean, you just have to look at, say, any zombie movie, or the Walking Dead, for example. It goes through every single season exactly the same. Is they're fighting off zombies. They find somewhere, they make it safe. More humans come along, and then eventually that trust and harmony is shattered. People get killed, and then they have to move on to somewhere else. The A24 film It Comes at Night is 5-star masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. I know you felt differently at the time of the A24 project, but that one is a film which is very timely, and I think we're about to start going through that kind of situation with everyone on lockdown, that tensions in households are going to get very frayed and taut. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Humans are far more capable of doing more damage than anything that you could ever wish to hope or create in your imagination. There's a horror shot there, isn't there?
Yeah, I think you almost think as well of today it's just peeped up on my phone that the American Labor Department has announced that 6.6 million Americans filed for jobless benefits last week. 16.5 million of people are now out of work. That is 10% of the US labor force are not working now. So as you kind of touched on earlier, history is repeating itself, and more so than ever today.
I mean, I just finished watching The Big Short, before we started doing this commentary, because I wanted to get my head around some of the facts and figures. And I remember that in that it said for every 1% of unemployment that goes up in the US, 40,000 people will die, basically down to just lack of money and lack of benefits, and how it impacts their sort of health and sort of work life. And it's a shocking sort of figure, and we're about to see something very similar. But I think what is interesting about this film is, even though there's this incredible thing happening, it's like the music, it's not going for the sort of bombastic, over the top feel. This is a very calm film. I think there isn't like the shouting and the screaming. It's a world away from The Big Short and The Wolf of Wall Street, which is very in your face and whatever. It's all eerily sort of calm and collected, the way that the people go about making their decisions.
So obviously one of the stars of this film as well is Zachary Quinto. He's also a producer. So this film kind of lands between sort of Star Trek 2009 and Star Trek Into Darkness. What did you make of Zachary Quinto as he played a scientist on a spaceship in this previous movie, and now he's a rocket scientist in this film. What did you make of Quinto's performance and sort of him as an actor?
I mean, the first time I saw Quinto would have been Heroes, a show which had an amazing first series and an awful second series. But I thought he was one of the standouts on that, and I thought he was very good at this. I think I think the fact that he was sort of Spock in Star Trek meant that a lot of the audience would have been familiar with him, so it allowed him to be the audience's sort of conduit into this world he makes for. He's a sympathetic character, he's trying to do the right thing. So I think, he buys in the empathy from the audience, and I thought he's very good in this. And he also is very good at delivering the jargon and dialogue to make it accessible to the audience and to his bosses later on as well.
In Star Trek, they would call that technobabble. So, it is amazing when you watch people deliver this. I can imagine it's the equivalent of sort of quoting monologue, a Shakespeare monologue, or Hamlet or something on stage. It's quite incredible the way that people can, it's the same with sort of The Big Short. Is like people are essentially speaking a foreign language, I think.
It sort of reminds me of Harrison Ford when he was shooting Star Wars, and it's like, he's got all the stuff about the hyperdrive and hyperspace and parsecs and stuff like that, and he turns to George Lucas and says, "Look, George, you can type this shit, but you can't say it." It's got to be. Yeah, you've got to believe these people are indeed real traders, so they're talking in a way that they would understand, but you do have to have it delivered in a way that doesn't completely alienate the audience and just builds a wall up between them. It's So they can't be like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. They have to be able to follow it, and I think that they do a good job on that. And I think that's one of the strengths of the script, that you can still follow what's going on, even if you don't know exactly what they're talking about in terms of, mortgage CBSs and stuff like that.
Do you feel like an expert now, having watched this film?
I'm not sure how you could call yourself. Did I read something that you need to do something for about 100,000 hours in order to be able to call yourself an expert or something? I don't know. I'll try and find that quote. But yeah, I think I would never want to call myself an expert. I don't want to be accidentally brought up on like BBC as 2008 financial crash expert and then be exposed for actually knowing nothing apart from, well, I saw this on The Big Short, so therefore I think I can bluff my way through it. No, you don't. What about yourself?
A little bit more, I would definitely say. Yeah, I remembered when I was sort of watching. Me and my girlfriend had caught Vice, and I really liked it. And the same with my partner, and she was like, "Oh, I really enjoyed that film." And I was like, "You should check out The Big Short," another Adam McKay film. Very sort of similar vein of style, and we were kind of going through the film, and like there'd be parts where she would be sort of struggling to get it, and it would be a case of like me pausing the film and going, right, so basically this is this, and like I sort of was thinking like, I think I've kind of become a sort of small, not an expert as such, but I have a pretty good understanding of this based on things like Margin Call, Big Short, and kind of my own reading and kind of probably listening to podcasts on politics and financial crashes and stuff. It's I feel like I could explain a subprime mortgage and so on. Yeah.
Would you do it in a bathtub, or?
I would prefer to do it in Vegas like Selena Gomez. So yeah, that would be my preference.
Yeah, so I mean, so watching The Big Short and stuff like that, I managed to get my head around it, and I think I know kind of where this film is meant to be taking place. They're talking here about the sort of risk on the mortgage-backed securities that they've got. Essentially, from what I can gather, I think that this firm, a fictional firm, I'm doing, quotation marks, but you can't see that because this is a podcast. It's a fictional firm, but I think it's meant to be kind of loosely based on maybe sort of Lehman Brothers and stuff like that, who went bust in 2008. They've been hitting the sort of risk factors. So I think this firm has taken out mortgage credit default swaps, which is what the characters in like Steve Carell and Christian Bale are buying in The Big Short on these companies. And this company sold them to them, and they are now hitting the levels due to the adjustable rate loans kicking in 2007, which meant that people were defaulting, which meant that these were losing value, although they weren't adjusting the rates on them. They were losing value, and therefore if the credit default swaps kicked in and hit the level where they had to pay out on them, they would be paying out more than the value of their own company. And then that leads them to trying to hatch a plan about how can we rid ourselves of these toxic CDOs in order to wipe them off our books to leave us in a reasonable financial position for when everything goes tits up. Is my reading correct? Would you concur with that assessment?
Dallas King, everyone. I mean, you said it in such a convincing way. You could have just absolutely been speaking bollocks there, and I would have been sold on it. So yeah, we'll go with that one.
Excellent.
I mean, you saw it just like a few minutes ago where they're sort of debating it in the car, like the wages these people are on. I mean, that's not a revelation to anyone listening to these podcasts. What these bankers are earning and on and stuff. It still boggles the mind when you look at your own pay slips and so on, and you think what these people were earning, and they were asleep at the wheel in the worst possible sense.
I know. Well, essentially, a lot of these traders were essentially getting commission on, selling people these toxic assets and stuff like that. But it's everywhere down to the banks and the mortgage lenders, who were essentially signing up people with no real line of credit, no way of backing up these loans. And true, they were probably fixed term for a while, but then as soon as they were having to go up to 200-300% on their initial payouts, then that's when the trouble kicked in. And yeah, essentially these people were making money for themselves but not thinking about the consequences of what they were doing. And now this is where we find ourselves in the film.
I suppose I keep coming back to that wonderful line in the Dark Knight Rises where, like, you have Catwoman whispering to Bruce Wayne, "You guys thought you could live, so large and leave so little for the rest of us," and it seems to kind of perfectly encapsulate this kind of generation of bankers and large businesses in terms of what happened. And ultimately, I think it was reminding the Big Short, I think only one person went to jail for all of this horrific crime.
Yeah, I think it was a French guy over in Switzerland or something like that. No one in America, because the banks got bailed out essentially by the taxpayers. So again, this is one of the things that it always comes back down to the little guy, and they're the ones that get screwed and end up having to prop up these big businesses. And I think we're seeing, certainly in the UK at the moment, there's going to be a bit of a movement against that kind of thing in the future. I think people are now fed up and they realise the worth of it's the low wage, minimum wage workers and the sort of gig economies and stuff like that are helping prop up and keeping the economy going. It's not the hedge fund managers or the bankers that are doing anything at the moment to make sure we get out of this. So.
Yeah. So what do you make of Simon Baker? He was someone I'd recognise as sort of being a bit of a Michael Flatley lookalike. I hadn't really seen him in much things apart from on the DVD covers of, like, I think it was, what was it called, The Machinist or something like that, or something along those lines.
I really sort of liked him in this book. I think that line where he's just like, "What time is it?" and he's like, he swears a couple of times. Apparently that line was ad-libbed, but JC Chandor really liked it. It's like a real reaction because he has now, in like a couple of seconds after looking at that printout, he has realised just how much crap they are in, and he's trying to plot his exit strategy or whatever. I mean, Kevin Spacey and Simon Baker were actually in LA Confidential together many, many years ago. He was the male gigolo who ended up getting killed in that. Jack Vincennes set him up with someone, and then he was actually responsible for Jack Vincennes' turn from the dark side to the light side, which eventually ended up badly for everyone involved. But see, that's a side point. He's also been in films like sort of Devil Wears Prada as well. Two people from Devil Wears Prada in this film. It's all about Devil Wears Prada for this. But I thought he was good. He's very amoral. He will basically, if there was three of you on a rope, sort of off the side of a mountain, and you were struggling to get up, he would cut the rope and let everyone else fall to their deaths in order to survive, I think.
The TV program is called The Mentalist, so there we go. One thing I find so amusing about this film as well is you've got the chap along with Zachary Quinto, I forget this character's name, who's basically just along for the ride, that contributes so little to this. He's just sort of the best friend that gets to enjoy he's drinking out of a bottle, and you can imagine just sort of, he's probably the closest thing to us. He's just sat at this table and he's probably thinking like, I have nothing to say here. I'm just sitting here as people are discussing basically the end of the world as we know it.
Yeah, Seth, that's the character's name.
That's it.
Yeah. He is essentially, he is so out of his depth. I think he's a trader in this, and I think he's probably selling stuff that he doesn't even know what it really is, and he's just here to make a quick buck. He says it's the only thing he's ever wanted to do, but I think he's realizing now that he is incredibly out of his depth and is in the wrong place at the wrong time, I think.
I suppose there's another element of kind of horror something for me where this constant search, like, where's Eric Dale, get Eric Dale back, and it's like, oh yeah, we got rid of him, we cut off his phone, he's not returned home yet, and it's just this sort of like search for like, where is this guy, we've got to get him, like that he's this missing piece when you're trying to probably get the best team together. It's so often it seems like in kind of these films, like these people are just like a phone call away or able to quickly jet in. This is someone that has lost their job, has probably gone off out in the piss and may return home at some point, and like little do they know sort of the world is hanging in the balance as it all unfolds.
It's kind of interesting that this film set in sort of like 2008, it shows how reliant we are on mobile phones. It's like every time they ask us where's Xdale, and the answer that everyone goes to is, well, we turned off his mobile earlier today, and it's like, all right, and then suddenly it's like, how do we find them? It's like everyone is so reliant on mobile phones in 2008. It's crazy to think about, even just 20 years before that, they weren't even really a thing.
Yeah, I suppose you had things like this in 24 at the time, where like it was such a different era for home entertainment with the mobile phone. It truly was like the go-to device more and more.
Yeah, I think Scream was probably the first movie that I saw that really took advantage of the mobile phone, allowing the killer to move everywhere. You know, before that, it was like the calls are coming from inside the house, and then it was like, you know, the mobile phone allowed the killer to be anywhere at any time. And yeah, no, it's a fabulous tool, but also we're a bit of slaves to them now as well. But they come in handy during a lockdown as well.
I do enjoy this element in the kind of the middle of the film where everything seems to sort of unfold in a kind of a real time, as it were, sort of like, okay, we're going to come back in 45 minutes, like we need to go off and kind of figure what we're out to do, and everyone is sort of having these conversations inside rooms as sort of the enormity of it is all unfolding. I think it's a really, I like how it gives you the moments of them going up onto the roof to have a smoke, or, you know, going off for a shave, or into side rooms as they sort of kind of grasp the enormity. It must feel like you kind of know, like, I suppose it's an element like you're the audience perhaps as well, where they're watching like the streets of New York, people are going around their day-to-day business, and you just know that tomorrow when they wake up they are all about to kind of suffer and struggle, and what must it be like to have that kind of information. I mean, you had it recently with the coronavirus briefings, like politicians would go into those meetings and go, okay, and then they would call up their trader and go, right, I want you to ditch all of this stock in kind of this and that and invest in health and Zoom and remote technologies. And then they're going off and telling people, hey, don't worry about it, it'll be gone soon, while at the same time they're making massive profits once again off people's kind of despair and ignorance.
Yeah, no, this scene it's interesting because it's almost your only chance to sort of really get to know a bit more about the characters. You know, you get to learn a bit about Paul Bettany's Emerson and stuff like that, and sort of why these guys are all in the business and stuff like that. So it's an attempt to make them, I guess, slightly more human, you know, whether or not you empathize with them and go along with them and their decisions that they make later on. I guess that's up to you and how you feel about it. But one thing I got from this film, and certainly as we move into the sort of main boardroom section when Jeremy Irons, head honcho, comes along, is that essentially these people they know the terror that's coming before anyone else. It's like, it's almost like these are the people who are about to start a world war. They know that they have to fire the first shot, and they're basically having to come to accept that they are going to start this. They know exactly what's going to happen and what it's going to mean, but they have to come to that decision themselves and be okay with it themselves in order to do it. Obviously, that's where the great internal struggle with this film is that there's people on opposing sides about, you can't do that, yes we can. It's like, well, if we don't do it, someone else will, so isn't it better to be first than last and stuff like that. So that's really the sort of strongest element of this film, is the back and forth, and it puts, because the audience is essentially in the boardroom with them, it puts you in the situation of, well, what would you do if you were in the situation? So Lee, I put it to you, what would you do if you were in that boardroom? What would you have done?
I like to believe I would have done the right thing, but ultimately I suppose I'm not in that boardroom. I know it's the ultimate cop out, but you know, I imagine to be in that room you truly have to be kind of soulless, probably, to an extent, that you're dealing in numbers, and as you're kind of you touched on earlier, like, you're looking at these screens and it's like numbers and it means nothing. You can't put a human face to it, and maybe that makes these people kind of sleep a little bit better. Maybe it makes them make the right decisions or the wrong decisions. I struggle in that. I mean, my job is all about kind of interacting with people, helping people, putting a face to it, putting people at the heart of every decision I kind of make. I think I'd really struggle to be in a room like that. I mean, it's easy for me to say I would not do it, or I wouldn't accept the money as they do later in the film, but it's crazy to think that people are making these calls, and it's going to change the way the world kind of unfolds for years to come.
You know, I think that the people in this kind of world, I think, like you say, there must be an element of soullessness. It's like, the people they phone and sell this stock to and stuff like that, I don't think they see them as humans or other people. I think they are just essentially numbers on a spreadsheet. And that's where, the downfall came, is that they saw everything as numbers and they can't be harmed by numbers. And they don't think that the people they're going to hurt are real. And it turns out that they really are. And yeah, that's where it is. I think, if they're just talking about here, it's like they went all in and it was all about making money. It wasn't. They've gone in too far, too deep, and they haven't got time to think about. They never really thought about what it would mean, and yeah, that's where it comes back to bite them on the ass, big time, and all of us again. Because that's the thing. It's like even though this is a fictional tale set around the real world thing, the decisions made here affect everyone. It's not just the people in the room. It affects everyone, every walk of life. I know they're talking about the coronavirus, it's the great leveler or whatever, but something like this is the same, but it doesn't affect everyone. It might affect everyone, but it certainly doesn't affect everyone equally.
Well, apparently this film it's obviously based on a true story to an extent. This crash did happen, but this is a fake financial firm, but it's meant to have been based on Goldman Sachs, who came out of the financial crash pretty well, compared to a lot of them. So, a lot of people thought it was Lehman Brothers that this film was based on. It draws heavily more from sort of the Goldman Sachs situation.
I think was the Lehman Brothers, did they have a CEO by the name of Huld or something like that? I think their last name rhymed with Told, who is about to fly in the moment in the form of Jeremy Irons. And I believe it was a very minute sort of last flying in situation for him, because I believe, according to IMDb trivia, he'd signed the part and whatever, was keen to do it, but there was a visa issue that the American consulate and the producers had to get involved in to try and rush through on the 4th of July weekend, so he could basically hop on a plane, get stamped at immigration, go straight to the building, basically shoot his scenes in a couple of days and then fly back home again.
You often do wonder how much, you always have this image of actors, they're called up, big jobs, they've got paid this for, this shoot, and you think, oh yeah, they must have been there the whole day, they must have been on standby, where the reality is, some of these people don't even know what they're jetting or scooping into. I mean, I interviewed someone recently where they talked about Robert Redford had to leave their film to go shoot one of the Avengers films, and they had no idea which film that they were turning up for. They were literally just jetting in for a day, and they would find out later which part of the film they were going to be in and stuff like that. They had no context of sort of their larger role.
Yeah, no, I think with this one, I think they'd initially hoped that they could do a bit more rehearsal time, but I think essentially they maybe had one run through of this scene and then basically had to get it all done in pretty much a night, because apparently Demi Moore and Simon Baker were straight off onto the plane afterwards. And this was all filmed at night. Very, like you say, there's naturalistic light. They don't. So all the shots out the window of nighttime are the same. And I think by the end of this scene, they were pretty much down to the wire, because apparently one of the last shots with Jeremy Irons against the window, apparently you can see the sun coming up. So basically everyone had to be on their A game and bring it for this in order to get through it in time.
I love this sort of thing. If you're playing a drinking game at home, you're Jeremy Irons. Every time he says, speak in plain English, speak to me as if I'm a child, speak to me as an idiot. I think he does it about 15 times over the whole course of this conversation. Take a shot.
Yeah, but you do have to wonder, does he actually know this stuff? Does the character actually, is he meant to know this stuff, or do you think no, but I think in terms of Jeremy Irons' character, do you think he actually knows this stuff, or is he just basically blagging his way through the entire job? It's like he doesn't need to know the ins and outs of what's going on, as long as they're in the black rather than the red, it's okay.
Yeah, I think it ultimately probably comes down to he's probably one of these people, you see it with a lot of these kind of hedge fund managers or people that are in charge. They go, well, I will just leave it to these other people and stuff, and I will just enjoy my cut of the money that I get every few years, or the political influence or something like that. I imagine that even from probably their day, from when they were on probably the floor to where they are now, things have probably rapidly changed, and they probably just place their trust in every other person and just sort of float on by, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a fantastic scene, and apparently the IMDb picked up another interesting point in that Paul Bettany's Emerson apparently doesn't actually say anything in this film. Apparently he was on set for 12 hours and just didn't actually end up saying anything in the scene because you didn't have any dialogue. Basically, everything was pretty much... It's one of those scripts here where you cannot go off point, you can't ad-lib or anything like that. It needs to be pretty much bang, 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 hit the nail on the head, because everyone else's lines is dependent on it. There's no room for error with a script like this, I don't think.
I suppose it is like theatre in a way that, for better or worse, you could probably put on Margin Call on at your local theatre, the Traverse, on the stage in the West End of London. Like, this film is very kind of theatrical in sort of the way it unfolds and so on. And I think that they use the budget very effectively, and I think it would make for a very engaging kind of theatre play. And I imagine probably for the cast involved, it probably did feel like being on stage in terms of these tight windows, very little room to kind of maneuver. It's know your lines, turn up. I think there's something definitely theatrical about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think apart from like the couple of scenes where they're like out at the nightclubs and stuff like that, I think you could easily sort of cut that sort of stuff, and yeah, you could easily do it at stage play. It kind of reminds me of sort of Glengarry Glen Ross, or sort of 12 Angry Men. It's got that sort of, like you say, theatrical, sort of almost one location sort of thing. Just people. This movie is essentially people talking. It's quite interesting in that it's a film about trading, but you never actually really see the trading. You don't see the trading flow where people sort of buy, sell, the commotion of that. They managed to make a fantastic film about that without actually showing it. It's like Reservoir Dogs is a heist film without the heist, or High Flying Bird from last year is a film about basketball, which actually doesn't feature any basketball on it. It's all about the behind the scenes mechanics of agents and stuff like that. So I think it's amazing that they've managed to make such a compelling film about the stock market, but then not actually contain any scenes on the stock market, the physical stock market at Wall Street, so to speak.
There seems to be a lot of these things when I suppose it's probably the element of the stock market. I'm thinking probably like Peep Show, where it's like, oh, it's not real, it's just something that, as I say, it's on a computer screen and stuff. I suppose the element of what the stock market means and sort of how it means to people is something that's so cerebral, really, in a way. It's this blip on a screen that goes up and down and numbers, but people don't necessarily get that, even if something's in a decline or things like that. I don't think people ever sort of truly grasp it until they see how it affects their day-to-day life, as it sort of will unfold sort of in this film in sort of the coming weeks and days. It's when people are talking just now about, oh, like it's going to affect interest rates and subprime this, and I'm thinking like, oh, how will that affect my pay? Is that going to have an effect on sort of the tax I'm putting on, or should I look at what my mortgage is, how that gets affected? It's all until it kind of hits your own payslip, I think, and I find it hard to just get my head around the complete enormity of the stock market and how the consequences of it, I guess.
I think that's why it's like here in the UK, whenever they do the annual budget, the Chancellor comes out of number 11, he holds a briefcase which doesn't have anything in it. I never believe it actually has anything in it. It's more just a ceremonial briefcase. But then when he goes through the thing, the BBC websites and stuff will basically break it down to, how will this budget affect you? Because that's essentially what people want to know. It's like, oh, they're raising taxes on petrol, they're raising taxes on booze and alcohol, council rates, tax rates are going up. How does it affect my wage? How much am I going to be left with? How much more are they taking month by month? That's what ultimately will concern people. So when they talk about subprime mortgages and stuff like that, it's designed so people sort of almost glaze over and not pay attention, and that's how it allows them to get away with all this sort of stuff. And this is the moment now where Jeremy Irons is essentially making his move and his plan and what to do, which is essentially offload everything onto everyone else before they realise what's going to happen. And this is where sort of Kevin Spacey is talking about how they can do it, but it's clear that he is not 100% behind the plan.
Yeah, I guess like these people were ultimately going to be going in and committing kind of career suicide. They probably thought they were going to go in, make these toxic sales, screw over leads, links, business partners with what they were looking to do in terms of kind of flooding the market, and they probably would never be able to work again. I would probably be very surprised if they truly did face the kind of consequences, and they probably continued to find themselves in this sort of employment, whether it's with a different firm or not.
Well, I mean, I guess it's like they're offering bonuses to all the traders to basically fire sale all the stock. And then I guess if they're made redundant and have no former links to the company, then maybe they can't be then brought back in to, you know, go against them, or if anything goes bad and stuff like that. But it's like they know that the game is up and it's now a game of chess essentially to outmaneuver all their opponents so they can remain on top, even if it means, you know, sacrificing half of their employees at the same time. It's as long as it doesn't affect their wage in the end, it's okay to sacrifice a few pawns if the king and queen can make it to the other side of the board unscathed.
You see it just now in kind of American politics where people are debating the very same thing of like, we should open the economy over Easter, we should have the markets open now, we can't have, you know, the economy essentially die. You know, I'm sure the old people would be happy to sacrifice themselves to COVID so we could get on with kind of keeping the stock market kind of thing. It's so brazen, some of the language that people are talking about in terms of the economy.
Yeah, no, well, especially when certain political figures have perhaps vested interests in certain aspects of the economy, you know, and even particularly certain pharmaceuticals, which, amazing enough, I rewatched Contagion the other day as well because it's on Netflix, and it's gone from a science fiction film from actually the same year, 2011, to a documentary because it's hitting every single point on the head as to what's happening right now, and that someone will say that this drug is absolutely 100% going to help with the effects of coronavirus, and it turns out nobody knows if it does, but you know, if they say it does, people go buy it, stocks will go up, and then they make a bit more money, and that's essentially what these people are doing. It's not about the health and welfare of the public, it's about making money. Obviously, I realise people need to make money in order to survive and stuff like that, but it is an incredibly complex and difficult situation. You know, people are having to adapt, find new ways of doing things, new ways of working. We're all working from home now. I expect a lot of people will argue that they could probably work from home in the future, even though once everything's back to normal, because it's been proven that they can. You know, the world will not be the same, and yeah, I mean, even just watching a movie, you know, we're not able to watch movies in the cinema at the moment, so we're here recording a podcast, watching a movie on a computer or an Apple TV or something like that. You know, it's been there for a while, but, you know, we're all having to adapt and change our ways. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's just a horrible kind of experience kind of we're all going through just now. I suppose we're kind of seeing how the world's kind of changing. You know, we're kind of in the middle of this lockdown. We don't know when we're going to go back. If we're going to go back, how will we be able to do the things that we took for granted? I mean, it's crazy when you think the last film I saw at the cinema was Misbehavior, you know, surrounded by other people. Will I be able to do that again this year? I would never have thought that. Like, life just changed so rapidly quickly, and it feels like that was the same in sort of 2008, and you know, in a political sense, and sort of in kind of how people's lives really unfolded in America. I mean, after this happens, you have the auto industry starts collapsing, you know, huge bailouts. It was a crazy situation. I mean, these guys were first, really. They went first, and you know, everyone else kind of began to sort of face the consequences of maybe not having gone first, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're not first, you're last, and then, you know, you're out of the game, essentially. And, you know, in the 21st century, you know, we're dealing with this coronavirus, which is going to lead to recession and economic potential collapse. You know, it's almost like, you know, in the 20th century, you know, in 1918, they had the Spanish flu, and then sort of 29, they had the Great Depression, economic collapse. It's like the 21st century went, you did those separately, hold my beer, and decided, you know, I'll do them both at the same time. We'll get it over and done with so we can get out of this quicker. Whether it'll be quicker, who knows?
And I love the shot really of these two executives
Yeah.
kind of sat. There's this poor woman, the cleaner, the type of person that is going to be absolutely screwed over by the decisions that they're making today, and she is in complete bliss about what's going on. Whereas these people seem to have no shame about debating in front of this woman what is gonna happen. It's terrible.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is sort of Demi Moore's character, who is just basically finding out herself that they're going to throw her to the wolves, and basically she's going to be blamed for it and be made redundant. But her redundancy package is still going to be about 4 or 5 million, whereas what's that cleaner going to get? Nothing, probably no health benefits or anything like that. So it's clear that it's one rule for some people and one for everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, it is so gripping that, ultimately very little is happening apart from, we kind of look at it as these are just people talking about what is going on here is kind of more monumental than you can imagine sort of your Avengers or anyone kind of like that debating, oh, we're going to do this to save this planet and this world. These are essentially the villains in their own kind of meteor cave and stuff like that, kind of planning how they're going to end the world and screw everyone over. It's like, this is what they kind of are doing, I guess.
Well, you say Marvel and the Marvel Cinematic Universe there, but on a recent filibuster, we talked about Batman Begins, and the League of Shadows admitted that they tried to take down Gotham using economics and plunging Gotham into recession. So it's this could potentially fit nicely into. I mean, some of the shots here, it's got a similar sort of cinematic, and the sort of cinematography could be more reminiscent of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy than probably in keeping with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even though Vision is on the screen right now, of course.
Yeah, it's one of these things. Like I just love them that they're munching away over the food and still talking about how much people are worth and so on. And it's I find it sometimes when we were watching sort of the Social Network the other day, and it's crazy thinking like, oh yeah, that guy's worth 61 billion, and that guy's worth 2 billion, that person's worth 10 billion, and it just boggles the mind that for things like the internet, for banking and so on, that these people are making absolutely insane amounts of money. It feels unethical, I guess, or maybe that's just me being jealous and bitter.
Yeah, no, I think there comes a point when it's like 61 billion. It's like, do you really need another billion? You're never going to spend all of that. And even then, it's like that 61 billion could be wiped out in a day on the stock market if things went really badly. It's not real money. I think that's the thing. It's not. I just can't see it as real money. But even then, you look at the situation now where, these companies are having to close up shop, and then, they're making their staff redundant, their frontline staff redundant, while, they sit on their dividends and stockpile and stuff like that. It's not the owners of these companies, they're asking for bailouts and stuff like that, yet at the same time sacking workers, making them redundant because they can't afford them when they're not taking pay cuts from the top level. It's unethical as a word, and criminal. It seems criminal at times as well, what is going on just now. And I think there needs to be more. I think we'll see a bigger change, certainly in the UK, in terms of, I think, the end of like 0-hour contracts and stuff like that. Although this is becoming almost more of a political podcast than a film commentary.
Well, call me cynical. I can't see it happening, Dallas.
You can't see it happening.
No, I think the situation we're in just now, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of it. All these sort of 0-hour contracts, I guess, came out of this kind of financial kind of collapse, this gig economy, and people, as much as we all appreciate the people that are working in retail and these sorts of kind of roles that society have deemed not worthy of certain amounts of kind of pay, the ultimate reality is there will probably be more of these jobs will be created. You have a huge amount of people are going to be laid off, professionals, experts in roles, and there will be very few places for them to go, but places that will swell will probably be places kind of like retail, the gig economy further. And ultimately these people will be treated the same and stuff like that. I think, as you say, history, what we're seeing unfold in sort of Margin Call will unfold, and I feel cynical saying that, but maybe that's just working in employment has made me slightly cynical about business, I guess.
Yeah, no, because this is the next stage almost of Jeremy Irons' master plan here, is that once I think he admits it essentially sort of in the final conversation he has with Kevin Spacey, is that, they need a few people on board because there's going to be a lot of money will be there to be made out of the financial crisis by, people betting against the markets and stuff like that. And it's again, this conflict of interest of people, these senators and stuff who are owning stocks and things like that, and then sort of selling them or buying them in advance of, these briefings coming out and stuff like that. They get first-hand knowledge of it, and that sort of thing sits very uneasily with me. I don't think that kind of thing should be allowed. I think that's where the real sort of moral corruption lies.
I love how we've still got Seth is kind of kicking around and stuff. Now he's got an errand to go on, so the poor boy's finally getting something to do today.
Yeah, no, it's like he does seem like the lackey. He's like there and just it almost seems like they go out and get us no one goes out for coffee. Do you notice that no one's going out for like late night Starbucks or anything like that? To keep them going. I don't think I've seen anyone have like a Red Bull or energy drinks or anything like that, because they were definitely still around that sort of time. There was still a big thing like Red Bull, but no one's jacking Red Bull and stuff to get through essentially what is. Like, these people aren't sleeping. They're going for like 24 hours to sort out this problem.
Yeah, and I like that you see that people do look a bit tired and are rubbing their eyes, and I do like that there's this sort of condensed period of time, and it would be probably easy for them to kind of just look like, oh, they're fresh Hollywood actors that have probably been sleeping in their huge hotels and so on and such like, but they do seem quite kind of tired, a little bit haggard as the kind of day goes on and so on. It's just little touches that I think kind of really add to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, they were all, this entire film basically was all, pretty much majority of it was all shot on nights. So, I mean, I guess with everyone sort of flying in and out from either LA or London or whatever, jet lag would have been a factor. So I imagine that the tiredness is probably real, and the fact they were doing sort of 14-hour days at night as well. And I think they also shot chronologically. From what I remember, they basically went from the start of the script through to the end of the script, basically night after night. So it certainly allowed them they didn't have to jump back and forth as to where they were sort of emotionally or ethically, I guess.
So obviously talking about kind of scores, really, this is obviously a film that we said had a budget of 3.5 million. It would go on to get 19.5 million at the box office, so that was an impressive kind of result for a film like this. The film made its premiere at the Sundance Film Festival and opened in theaters in October 21st 2011, grossing kind of 5,354,000 in domestic ticket sales. It was screened at 199 theatres during its widest release in cinemas, and earned 14 million in business through international release to make it to 19. So it's pretty impressive for a film like this, which is, yes, it has some star names, but it's not sort of the thing where you think, oh, I want to watch a movie by Kevin Spacey, oh, get Margin Call, or Jeremy Irons, oh, I want to watch more, say, Die Hard 4 than something like this. So yeah, it did pretty impressively, in my opinion, sort of at the box office, and certainly internationally too. It was interesting that a film like this about a very American kind of business seemed to kind of resonate with international audiences.
Yeah, no, because I guess there was maybe people were maybe interested to see how this whole mess started out, perhaps, because, like you say, on paper it's not the most commercially appealing film. Like you say, it is very theatrical. It is just people sitting in a room talking about a bunch of numbers, essentially, when you boil it down to it. So the fact that it did well, I mean, clearly the sort of the big name cast helps in sort of securing that appeal, but the fact it sort of premiered at Sundance and then sort of got an early October release, but still managed to get that sort of critical acclaim sort of wave continuing through to grabbing that Oscar nomination, because most of that sort of stuff you're looking at you sort of Novembers, Decembers in order to do really well at the Oscars. So the fact that it had that critical appeal and acclaim, and I mean, it's easy to see. I mean, this is sort of one of those scenes here which other people may have potentially wanted to cut. Stanley Tucci's sort of speech about building a bridge, but it's all about essentially shortcuts and stuff like that, and making people's lives easier, and giving them a fighting chance. Whereas it's exactly what these companies are doing. They take the shortcuts at the expense of other people's lives.
And Seth gets to just look on. But that bridge is a real one. It was completed in 1986, which had been 22 years before the crash of 2008. So, it's not Hollywood fantasy here. That is a real bridge there.
But I'm assuming Stanley Tucci didn't build it himself.
That is unconfirmed thanks to IMDb trivia. It might be mentioned in his cookbook.
Oh, if he ever comes back to the Edinburgh Film Festival and does another Q&A, we'll have to ask him.
Absolutely. You've kind of written a book all about sort of the filming locations in New York. Would this be something that you would add into maybe a future release?
I'm not sure. It's difficult because, I mean, this is clearly sort of like a Brooklyn brownstone that they're at, so it's difficult to tell where. I mean, when they were up on the roof of the building, I could see a Macy's. So I think that building must be around about 34th and 6th, I think. 34th and 6th Avenue, I think. So yeah, somewhere around about there. So right in sort of Midtown Manhattan. But I mean, all these skyscrapers are sometimes cookie cutter. But I do know that building does not have a real helipad. The helicopter was added in post-production in order to make it look like it had a helipad, because they couldn't afford a building with a helipad, or they decided very late that he should be flying in, one of the two.
The film was shot in One Penn Plaza. So there you go. 250 West 34th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues in 7th Manhattan.
And 8th. Okay. But I knew it was by Macy's. 34th Street. The Miracle on 34th Street. That's what they could have called this film, The Miracle on 34th Street.
There you go. And this house, Eric Dale's house, is located on 144 Columbus Heights, between Clark Street and Pineapple Street in Brooklyn. So there you go. You can tour the margin call locations in between Ghostbusters and John Wick spots in what's it called? In New York.
Absolutely. I'd like to live in a place called Pineapple Street, I think. But I mean, obviously it's in the script, but that sort of brief sort of exchange there really shows what Stanley Tucci's character was about. Basically, almost giving sort of Emerson here like the big middle finger in terms of the numbers, as he reels off all the mental calculations in his head of the hours and days and years that he has saved all these people. It's just basically showing, I'm a lot smarter than you. I knew it was coming, and you shouldn't have let me go.
Yeah, I think that's the story of this film. Like, even though these people are pretty despicable, they're probably all still smarter than us, and that makes it all more terrifying, thinking, how are they going to be able to screw us next in their other job and stuff like that. It's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, given sort of this film, Wolf of Wall Street, and that, are you tempted to dabble in the stock market?
I would be, the only thing, like, I'm not a stock guy by anything. I could see something like, hey, this kind of impact of being locked down, I might want to invest in Disney Plus or Netflix right now. I just don't have the kind of the brains or sort of the interest to play the stock market. Maybe play one of those fake stock games on sort of like the App Store.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Zoom, that's apparently something we should have all invested in before this happened. I mean, I can't believe, everyone criticised Disney Plus for launching at the end of March in the UK. It was a terrible decision. We should have had it at the same time as everyone else. And then it turned out that they launched the day after the schools were closed and everyone had their kids at home. It turned out to be the most incredible marketing strategy that anyone has ever seen. Similar to Parasite winning the Oscar and then releasing in the UK the same weekend. Serendipitous. Could it have been foreseen? Absolutely not. Did it work out well? It certainly did.
Yeah, absolutely. I had no intention of getting Disney Plus until lockdown, and I remember just getting it straight away and stuff. It was, it's certainly a worthy investment for lockdown. Though I'm probably using it for terrible purposes, watching things like Doug and Recess and random Simpson episodes. I don't know if I'm really being smart with the things I'm picking on Disney Plus.
I'm still holding back off of Disney Plus, and I'm sort of going through sort of all 4 BBC iPlayer and Mubi and stuff like that at the moment. I know that the Disney Plus is there for when I run out of all those other things, but I'm trying to mix up my my streaming services.
Yeah. So we're kind of looking at this film. Why do you think people picked this movie, Dallas? Why was this film, did it beat out an incredibly popular A24 Safdie Brothers film, Booksmart, one of the most popular films of last year, and Mistress America from, Academy Award nominees like Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach? Why do you think people picked this?
Well, clearly they wanted to Scottish guys in their 30s, early 40s to guide them through the 2008 financial crisis. Clearly, there's no one in America or the UK other than us two that would be able to do that effectively, I think. So, yeah. But Lee, I turn that back on you because this was one of your 2 picks. What was it about this film that, you wanted to make one of your 2 choices?
Yeah, I really love this film in terms of something. I've watched this quite a few times. I'll have to get up on my letterbox how many times I've potentially kind of recorded it on it. But I just really, I mentioned at the start of the thing, I really enjoy films about people in rooms that are experts at something and very little else is kind of going on. I tend to find that quite gripping. And I think Margin Call is just... it's my type of horror movie. I just think it's really well acted. I love films that take place in sort of a condensed period of time. And I just think that it's an excellent kind of film and stuff. I really think G.C. Chandler is an exciting director. I mean, he's gone on to produce Most Violent Year, which was a film I thought was excellent. He also kind of recently produced Monos. I don't know if you saw that as well. This foreign language feature about kind of guerrilla kid soldiers. He's a really exciting filmmaker, and I think for a debut feature, this was one that got me to kind of go, well, I'm going to go see all of this guy's films. I'm really interested in him as a talent. He's clearly able to do a lot with a little, and that was really appealing to me. I think he's definitely one of our most exciting directors out there. I mean, A Most Violent Year that he follows this up with, or follows up soon after with, is genuinely one of the best sort of dramas and New York films of the past few years.
I know, speaking of doing a lot with a little, I mean, the film directly after this he did was All Is Lost, which was just Robert Redford on a boat, in the middle of the ocean, battling the elements. So, I mean, if you said there that you would see everything that he's done, so have you seen Triple Frontier then?
I have seen Triple Frontier, yeah. I caught that one on Netflix. I actually got to interview the composer for that film, so that was quite good. But yeah, I enjoyed that one. But for me, I think this and Most Violent Year are kind of far and away my favourite of his features. And in terms of his productions as well, Monos as well, I think is definitely up there.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been rumours recently. I think Jessica Chastain and Oscar Isaac apparently did a Q&A, and there was rumours that there might be a sequel to A Most Violent Year. Is that something that you're keen to see? I'm assuming it'll be set in the late 80s or maybe early 90s perhaps now.
I don't think I can't see it happening. I hope it. I'd be very curious to see it, but I can't see it actually being made and released. I mean, I think it was a modest success. I don't know if who's clamouring to get a sequel to this. I think it was one of those fantastic one-off films. So yeah, I'm curious to see if they do it, but I think it's probably just a bit of chitter-chatter and sort of one of these events. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's probably sort of internet speculation, and I mean, it'd be interesting to see, if we have any news on the A24 project about it in the upcoming weeks and months. But yeah, I think it's the one that's clearly probably stuck on the rumour mill for a long, long time, because, when you've got actors like Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain who are so far in demand at the moment, I think it's going to take a lot to align all those chess pieces back onto the same board again to get another go round on it. But it'd be interesting to see, because, that was a film which was dealing with sort of the murky underworld of finance and stuff in New York in the 80s. So maybe it leaps forward in time to 2008 to find that couple and how they deal with the financial crisis again. So
Yeah, he came out with a really interesting quote as well about sort of the making of this film, which I think we kind of touched on. So at its core, if the film Margin Call is anything, it's a tragedy. It's structured as a thriller, a ticking time bomb movie, but an hour into the film, you know the bomb can't be defused, and the crux of the story becomes who are they going to drop it on? And I think that's what makes it such an interesting film, is like, you know what's going to happen at the end, the people that are going to be kind of screwed over and have their lives changed forever. But it's interesting to sort of see these cold, ruthless people make those decisions, and how they are going to kind of handle, I suppose it's kind of like, throwing the hot potato around the room of like who's going to get burned and who's going to be the one to drop it.
yeah, it's the worst game of musical chairs ever. When the music stops, I think actually, Jeremy Irons actually talks about that. It's like, when the music stops, we don't want to be left holding the thing, and then it's like Zachary Quinto says, the music actually isn't stopped; it's just slowing down. When it does stop, everyone is screwed. So it's just like they're starting the musical chairs, and they're making sure that they are basically fixed to their chair, while everyone else is scrambling around looking for somewhere to sit before the excrement hits the fan.
Yeah. I find it interesting as well that, with Zachary Quinto's character, his elevation over the kind of this film as well, that he goes from someone that is just kind of there, survives a day, to being put into this elevated position from kind of a day's work. It's kind of ruthless. You can imagine sort of Wall Street, and a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, but then a lot of people are going to benefit from it, and they will continue to get these crazy salaries.
Yeah, I mean, and someone who's probably not going to make it through is the tearful, sobbing Seth here. He's come to the realization that he is screwed, and probably quite a lot of people he knows as well are screwed. And is he upset about the fact that this is happening, or is it purely a selfish reason that he thinks that his job is on the line and he's going to lose out?
I mean, when those subtitles popped up there going, he gasps, he sobs, I think we could all have related to that in the past week or so. But I think there's probably an element of it. I mean, I don't know about you, where this is a horrible situation that we're going through. I mean, people are losing their lives, things are going terribly wrong, people, are losing jobs and so on. I mean, thankfully I am okay at the moment and stuff, but as much as I care about my loved ones and people in my life and stuff like that, you can't get your head around a complete situation about all of these people that are going to be affected, because it would just become paralyzing and suffocating. You sometimes just have to think about yourself first, get yourself up and going, and then take it from there. And I can imagine a situation like that, even though he knows all of these people are going to face similar situations to him, it must just be overwhelming, thinking, oh, I'm not going to be doing my job, I might lose my career, I'm all these sorts of things that are going to go on. I suppose you're thinking of yourself first before probably everything else, because that's all just going to have to take care of itself, I guess.
Absolutely. I actually have to just talk about this shaving sequence here, because I don't know if it's just me, but he seems to be going against the grain. Now, when I shave, I go down the way. What about yourself? I mean, is he shaving wrong, or am I shaving wrong? I'm asking the big hard-hitting questions. Razor. Oh, you use an electric. I see.
Yeah.
So you just go all over around.
Weeks,
right.
Yeah.
Are you growing the lockdown beard then? Are you?
I'm just going for the disheveled look and stuff like that. I will just come out of this like looking like a caveman and tramp in hopefully a few weeks, in a month's time, and then just fighting over people to get a haircut.
Exactly, you've just hit the nail on the head. That is a growth industry for when eventually we all get a lockdown. Hairdressers are going to become one of the essential businesses that we need. They're going to make a killing when we get out of here and everyone finally needs a haircut, or heaven forbid everyone starts cutting their own hair.
Well, Stanley Tucci is back. Eric Dale, they finally got him back into the building, and he's not proud. He's made the choice here that he probably has to pay for that expensive house. Exactly.
This is him in the awkward situation where he doesn't want to help out the company, but knows that ultimately money talks in the end, and that if he loses all his stuff, his family is screwed. So therefore, he's going to sit in a room very quietly for 9 hours and take an extra 2.5 million, and then head home. Probably not with his head held high, but at least he'll have a home to go to. So.
Yeah, this is what this is what makes cinema so great, is that, you know, it puts you in that position of watching people and, you know, make these decisions. And I don't doubt that these characters would make these decisions. You know, do I agree with them or not? That's regardless. I get to be exposed to people that are in, you know, completely alien situations to me, and come away with a better understanding of how the world works, you know, than I did going into it. And I think sometimes that's what cinema is there to do. It's not necessarily just on to documentaries to showcase and shine a light on that way of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's about educating, entertaining, and informing. And this is a film which certainly informs. It gives us a better insight into what it does. I mean, it is a fictional take, so it can be entertaining as well. I mean, The Big Short was entertaining as well, but it does sort of give you a better grasp and knowledge of just the mechanics of what it was and of the people who made these sort of decisions. So it was very interesting in that respect. But, you know, it's certainly there are films like this where you think, you know, you're locked down in your home, you're wanting to put a film, escape, you know, visit other worlds, other times and stuff like that. But then, you know, there are films like this that, you know, can help sort of. Would they scare you? I mean, Contagion is a film which a lot of people are watching, and it's like one of those ones which it's like, I'm watching it, I'm terrified. I really feel that I shouldn't have watched it again. I wanted to watch it to kind of get a grasp of, you know, well, what exactly are we dealing with here? But at the same time, it's too close to the bone. This one is something which is probably at the moment in that sort of safe space of, it's probably a little bit too far disconnected from what we're about to go through. But, you know, give it a couple of months, then you're probably going to watch this and go, this is far too real and too close for comfort.
Yeah, I think this speech from Kevin Spacey is fantastic. I mean, I remember sitting in the cinema thinking, he probably could convince me that I should make this decision to, you know, sell this toxic assets off to people. And I don't know what that says about me, but you know, whether it's acting, the way he sells it, you could almost just go, you know what, I get it. I guess I would go for it. It was it's a great delivery. It's not a shouting speech. It's not one that's come from the heart. It's just, you know, it's cold, calculated, and appealing to probably people's basic instincts.
You know, that's the thing about this whole film, is it's very calm. No one, I don't think, ever really shouts. There are no raised voices.
There's no Mark bomb.
There's no Mark bombs yet. There's no, you know, it's all very matter of fact. It's like, this is the way it is. You know, essentially this speech can be condensed down to, well, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So you might as well just take the money and you're damned if you do. So, but, you know, the way he does it is like, yeah, it's like, this is the quality of Kevin Spacey as an actor. You know, he's really sort of good at this kind of stuff. He can be your best friend, or he can be like the worst boss in the world. But here he's basically saying, I know this is a completely awful, terrible situation. You know, I don't want it to go this way, but it's the way it's going to go. So we all have to work together and get out of it as best we can. And yeah. And, you know, I mean, what did you make of... So I was going to say, what do you make of the situation? You know, this subplot line with his dog, the death of the dog. Did you think that added anything? It seemed maybe slightly out of place to me.
It's definitely one of the oddest elements of the film, and I suppose if you're listening to this, you will have seen the film. Obviously, the film ends on that moment with the dog, and Mary McDonough, who is listed in the credits, finally appears at the end. Yeah, it's an odd little thing, but I suppose it probably humanises that in amongst all this millions of, you know, pounds that are being kind of traded and so on like that, people are still have their own issues to bear, whether that's dogs and so on. It's an odd moment. I'm sure it could have been cut, but I think it adds a little something.
I mean, and what do you make of the directorial decision to not show the trades happening? You know, the building up to the big moment, and then basically almost cutting away to the aftermath. I know potentially some of it could have been down to budget, but what did you make of that decision?
I think it's interesting. I suppose what we've kind of seen is that, I kind of touched on these are almost serial killers in a way. They are just deciding how they are going to stab people in the back and go out and hunt these people down and take advantage of them. And I suppose if we went out and saw all these trades taking place, it would be further of these it would be like mass stabbing, really, I guess. It would be a real horror blood show. I think there's an element of it where you can just maybe imagine, maybe you're in the cinema and you got one of those phone calls looking to sell something, or you were in that moment when you realised, oh, why am I getting this call and this offer? It seems too good to be true. I guess I'll go for it. I guess it's just sort of playing out in kind of maybe the audience's minds, and maybe just what we could imagine sort of being on the receiving end of this kind of situation would be a bit more terrifying.
Because, I mean, yeah, you look at a shot like this and then compare it to like the big trading rooms of like Wolf of Wall Street and stuff like that, a completely different sort of energy. You don't have Matthew McConaughey doing his fist, fist pumping sort of thing. That would have been his motivational speech compared to Kevin Spacey's there. He would have been like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, this is what you get here, complete, almost eerie sort of silence. And that's what makes it almost more unsettling, because it goes completely against what audiences have come to expect and know from cinematic language of the stock market and the trading floors and stuff like that. It's, something is incredibly wrong here.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things, like, and I suppose it's such a small world, Wall Street as well, and you can imagine it just takes one little phone call, someone just saying, hey, what are you guys doing? And I suppose it's, as Kevin Spacey touched on, that first hour and a half is truly kind of the important thing, because you're going to get exposed for that user up to something horrible and deceitful, and it's just more how many people can you screw in that first 90 minutes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you've got, I mean, you can't lay all the blame on this company, because the other companies were buying it. They were buying this stuff to look to make a profit on it themselves. So it's a vicious circle, I guess, and it's just it's an almost alien world to me sometimes, sort of all this sort of stuff, and it's just these films help to give you a better understanding of. I mean, I'd never be a part of it, and I can never truly understand it, but it does help somewhat to sort of bring it down to the 5-year-old, the retriever dog, the layman's terms of how stuff like this can actually happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, we're facing the consequences still, over a decade on from days like this, and it's just they achieved what they wanted to achieve, and even in they're off to lose millions here in terms of the country. These people are still getting told, hey, you'll all receive 1.3 million if you hit this, and then an additional bonus, and you count up the number of people in that room, and it's truly kind of mind-boggling, the numbers that are getting banded around, and sort of the kind of lowest of the low for this kind of company in their terms of their history.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably looking at 3 times, probably 20, 25, 3, probably 75, 80 million for the traders, and then another 10 million for Stanley Tucci and Demi Moore. All these characters will be getting bonuses as well, and knowing that the fact that, most of them will all be out, and this is the point when Kevin Spacey, who is the most has probably the deepest moral center and one of the more sympathetic characters who wanted out, is now being told that he has to stay. And he's going. This is potentially where you're going to get the shouting match, but again, where you think the film is going to go, it sort of twists and goes in a slightly different direction. So this is where you get the I guess the Academy Award winning showdown between Jeremy Irons and Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, and it's even this moment, there's still the more sackings going on, and it's just, it's such a horror show to watch unfold. And then even in this kind of moment, they're still kind of right, this is what we're going to do now. It's just business as usual. Really, it's shocking how kind of whiplash effect is going to be felt by everyone else, but for these people it's like, right, on to the next thing. And it's they'll survive, kind of, there will be no breakup of the banks. They're not too big to fail. They have just kind of come out of this incredibly well.
Yeah, no, it's like they've secured their position, but there's a lot of other banks now which are potentially at death's door and are needing to sell assets, which this company can then pick up for a penny and then profit on later on. And that's how they see it. Bad day at the office. Yeah, we lost probably a few hundred, probably a few $1 billion, but we're safe. We've not got much money now. We just build up again, and because people will always, nothing ever changes. They talked about regulation after the 2008 crash, but nothing ever really happens. These companies, even though they lose a lot, they're still so powerful, and the economy is so propped up by them that they'll be here even after us. Some of them anyway. Not all of them made it out, but some of them still survive.
I love the kind of chilling line as well from Jeremy Irons, like, I'm starting to feel pretty good about this. And even then, sort of, we're talking about this whole idea of the stock market and as something that's hard to get our head around. I mean, you have Kevin Spacey's character there talking about, well, at least if I dug ditches I would have something to physically show for it. I guess what these people are doing is it's all kind of, it feels like make-believe, I guess, to an extent. They're just trading money that does or doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's like he says, it's just made up numbers. It's bits of paper, with numbers on it. That's all it is. And in the end, none of it really matters. But, it matters to some people, and it matters to these people, and they'll continue doing it. And there he's listing there all the other times there was financial crashes and problems and stuff like that. And, we never learn. That's the thing. It's like, we never learn. It happens again and again, and we just let it happen, and then we expect something to change. And at the moment, nothing ever changes, as evidenced by the number of times it's all gone tits up and we have to rebuild again from scratch.
So obviously we're kind of getting towards the end of the film now. What's your kind of thoughts on this as a film? Is it one you will seek out again in the future? Did you enjoy it? What would be your kind of review of this one?
I mean, I think I rated it on Letterboxd as a high 4-star film. I watched it last week once it had been selected as the choice, because I wanted to watch it and jot down some notes and stuff before rewatching it again. I didn't want to fly by the seat of my pants on this one. But, I think it's a really well-written, well-acted film. Great debut from J.C. Chandor. You can see he's got real talent, and, clearly the actors saw something in this guy to, agree to, if the entire thing was done for $3 million, which wouldn't even get you the bonus of a trader in this film almost. They clearly, a lot of them were working for scale, which is something which they don't have to do. They can command these large salaries, but when they see a project worth doing, that's what happens. And I think it's a really assured debut, and he's gone on to prove his worth since then. But I think it's a great film for our time, for that time, and then for our time now. I think it's one that people should watch, and it'll be a real eye-opener as to what's going on and what's about to be. History is repeating itself, and I think I'll certainly catch it if it's ever on iPlayer or something again. I'll certainly stick it on, because it's a cracking film full of great performances and great writing as well. What about yourself?
I suppose one thing I would say is just on this, where you have Kevin Spacey going, you know what, I actually need the money, I will stay, is that all these people, they're the richest of people, the top 1%, and how many times that they're like, they have their big houses, all these sorts of things, and they still need to kind of get them even more millions because of their big mortgages, their lifestyle. They can't just go from zero to nothing and so on. It's, there's never enough. I suppose there's no such thing as too much money in terms of these people, and then probably their career goals after this.
Yeah, no, you look at people like this, and it's like they are immediately thinking about themselves, but you just have to look at sort of the people with less money who are going through these current situations, and they're the people who are helping each other out either buying some groceries for someone or lending someone some money or driving around and helping out. It's the people with less money who have less to lose don't mind giving it away, almost, if that makes sense. It's a weird paradox.
Yeah, so ultimately, and who we finally get Mary McDonough, Donnie Darko's mum, the president from Battlestar Galactica. I'd love to know
President's
what her rate
wife
of
in
pay
Independence
was.
Day as well.
Yeah, she gets literally, in the opening credits and then appears in the final scene of the movie. That is like, you gotta give it to her agent for that one.
She must have the same agent as Mark Hamill in Force Awakens.
Yeah, the dog is in more scenes than her. I remembered watching the film for the first time, going, "Oh, I'm really excited to see her pop up." When is she coming? Is she about to fly in or jet in? Nope, she's just someone that gets interrupted at night time as Kevin Spacey is digging up dirt, as it were. So nothing kind of new there, I guess.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like for me, this is my third time having watched this film. I kind of had a wee look at my letterbox there. So I saw it in opening day in 2012 in the UK. I saw it at the Filmhouse Cinema, and then I caught it again in 2016. I actually own this one on Blu-ray. So even though I'm streaming it on another computer, I'm still kind of haven't dished out the Blu-ray. But yeah, it's been excellent to watch it again, and I didn't anticipate on my third watch of the film it would be in such circumstances, but I guess that's just the way it's kind of gone, I guess.
I mean, the Blu-ray, is there any sort of deleted scenes or anything? Because it seems like a very sort of tight script. I'm not sure if was there much that got cut, or is it pretty much his original vision on this one?
I'm not too sure what actually special features are actually on that. I will have to dust it off. But yeah, it wasn't probably the most film that's ever sort of necessarily needed a Blu-ray kind of release or purchase from me. But it was one of those films I wanted to kind of pick up. I think I got a good deal on it secondhand. It has 4 minutes of deleted scenes, Dallas. It also has an audio commentary as well. 2 minutes of deleted scenes are featured. If you thought the contrast was blown out, blah, blah, blah. One shows that the guy from Heroes running into an ex-girlfriend on the street. The scene is supposed to take place before 6:30 a.m. Yeah, it looks like midday, so I imagine that's why it was cut. And the other deleted scene shows Jeremy Irons giving a negative pep talk to the sales team, which has been left in, would completely undo the positive pep talk that Kevin Spacey gave prior to it. So I imagine that is why the deleted scene has gone as well. So yeah, it's also got an audio commentary and a couple of little extra bits and pieces. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the film. So yeah, our first audio commentary, and one for a financial crash film. I'm sure the only way we can go up is more cheery from here.
Absolutely. I'm sure the reason it was probably picked was because it was so topical, and people, either that or people wanted to try and screw us over by giving us the film which we knew the least about in order to be able to talk about it. But I hope people have got something out of it and have enjoyed us talking about it. It was actually been quite fun. This was very different for us, because we were thinking of different things that we could do for the episodes, because there are not as many new releases, certainly not at the cinemas, and there's some releases coming on streaming, but yeah, we're sort of lacking on content, so we're coming up with different ideas of what to do for stuff like this. So hopefully if you do enjoy this and watch along at home, we'd be interested to know what other films you'd like us to do. We did pick one that was around about no longer than an hour and 40, just to save our lung power. But yeah, do let us know. What have you made of it?
I've really enjoyed going through it again. I suppose this is our version of a Zoom house party kind of thing. So instead we're watching a film. So yeah, I think it was a fun experiment, and I definitely one maybe we'll do another one again soon. We'll get onto Prime or Mubi or something like that and see what's worth streaming and doing a review for. I guess it was good fun.
Absolutely. Whatever we pick, it'll probably be the one that we're not expecting. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Dallas, for joining me tonight to rewatch Margin Call, and yeah, hopefully we all feel like more experts about the horrors that are about to probably face us in the coming weeks and months. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, Dallas.
Absolutely, a pleasure. And I'm off to take all my savings out and put it all into the stock market. Because clearly that's the best thing to do. That's the one lesson I've learned from that. You can't lose on the stock market.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to everyone that stayed with us till the end, and we will all see you again soon. Take care. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.